So there's really only one important question right now, and that is, how are you going to capture first-person advantage in the evolving new area of artificial intelligence? That is to say, a new direction in AI. It's still generative. That is not the classic LLM plus reinforcement learning plus agentic stack. Not that that's unimportant. It'll still have a role. We love it. But let's move on because there is a new capability and it's worth our attention. Key differentiation, the new capability, which is based on active inference, which is based on variational inference. This is more useful for non-linguistic, non-token-based kinds of thinking. So things that are linguistic, code-based, we love it, absolutely. That's belonging to the whole LLM stack. And the things that are, how can you navigate around in a spatial world? How can you encounter new things, recognize them, move with agility? That's part of this new capability. So let's start to make some very quick little distinctions. And we're going to work our way back to that, how I screwed up, definitely, because that impacts your decision path forward. Before we get started, let me introduce myself briefly. I'm Dr. Aliana Moren. I've been teaching artificial intelligence in Northwestern University's Master of Science and Data Science program for the past 10 years. I've innovated or even introduced 3 of their top courses: Artificial Intelligence and Deep Learning, which I introduced back in 2017, the NLP, Natural Language Processing, which I've revised substantially, and then the capstone course specialized for people who are focusing on artificial intelligence. Now, that's my cover story. My real truth behind that has been that I've been an AI innovator and inventor, actually, for the past, really all my life. 4 patents to my credit. My current invention is something that I really feel will be useful as we move into AGI, but that's not our subject for today. The subject for today has been the frustration that's grown out of trying to teach students generative AI, realizing, oh my gosh, I need to revise and then revise again and then revise yet further that intellectual content because it needed to be put in such a way that you could get it relatively easily. And that's a challenge. And here's why. Let's make an analogy, shall we? Learning AI is like going on the Oregon Trail of Artificial Intelligence, starting in Elm Grove, Missouri, and going through basically prairie grass country, which is the backpropagation country. That is backpropagation, anything based on that like CNNs, and also will include reinforcement learning, which is of that era, which is wonderful and it's highly used today, but this is old stuff. And then we're going to go through that trail, and then basically we're going to pop over all of the generative AI. That is, we're going to essentially get on a plane or do a bus tour in the Fort Laramie area and just go over the Sierra Nevada mountains of generative AI and then find ourselves on the West Coast where there's LLMs, which are really a straightforward algorithm. They're generative. Like Boltzmann machines, are generative, but they're easy enough to understand, which is why so many people have learned them so easily. But we've skipped what really makes generative. And the reason is that it's conceptually much more demanding. It's at an elevation that isn't easily taught, and it isn't easily taught because most of your faculty don't know it. And the reason most of your faculty don't know it is that they don't have the right background and there haven't been educational materials to teach your faculty. So it's no big surprise that the number of people in the world who really understand generative at a deep level is very few. And that's probably why in all your studies, you haven't gotten the right educational support. So over the past 10 years, I've been trying to develop it, and successive, spurts of success followed by gaps, followed by failures where I realized, oh my God, I just really didn't address something that was absolutely vital. And those are the screw-ups. But here we go. First screw-up was realizing what I considered to be that generative AI mountain chain, which I knew back then, even 2017 when I first launched the course. It was a combination of 3 key areas: the Kolbach-Leibler divergence, actually the reverse KL, the Bayesian probabilities, and then statistical mechanics. I knew that all those things were involved, and I downplayed the KL divergence and way downplayed probabilities. And I emphasized stat mech for a good reason. Okay, that's the area. Now look, my background is theoretical physical chemistry. My daddy was a theoretical physical chemist. It's like apples not falling far from the tree. I'm daddy's little girl. But I focused in on the stat mech because that was the one thing that people couldn't easily teach themselves. Not that there wasn't material out there on stat mech, but there wasn't good material that translated it over to the information theory and the machine learning and the variational inference and all those things that we needed to be able to build up that understanding. That pedagogy was very much lacking, and I knew I could fill that in. So I spent a few years filling it in. And then I thought, okay, got it done. All I need to do is put this out in a short course, vocabulary-based stat mech, and a few links to some sources on things like the Kolbach-Liebler, which I had to reteach myself because I screwed up there too. But, and then the Bayesian, it's like I thought, just go look at the wiki, no big deal. I was wrong. I was really wrong. And the reason is this. To understand generative AI, you have to hold all three things in your head simultaneously. So you have to hold the stat mech. You have to hold the Kolbach-Liebler, actually the reverse Kolbach-Liebler, which took me a while, and then the probabilities. And you've got to hold all three simultaneously. This is like living in three dimensions of the universe simultaneously, and they're all morphing and meeting together at that Kolbach-Liebler nexus. It is not a trivial thing. And by de-emphasizing the probability aspect, that was a screw up. And I didn't realize it until a few weeks ago. And part of the reason that I realized it was I've been involved in the Foundations of Active Inference study group with the Active Inference Institute, where I'm a board member, and we're studying with, let me show you this book, Fundamentals of Active Inference by Sanjeev Namjoshi. Excellent, excellent book. Look, this is a truly graduate level textbook. I'm going to try opening up a few random pages here. I'm going to get into chapter 4 if I can. See if I'm marking that thing up. There we go. Markups. This is beautifully written. It's exquisitely formatted. A lot of very delicate, detailed, minutia level figures in here. This is not just PowerPoint stuff. This is really beautifully, exquisitely done stuff. The equations are elegant. It's microfont. Okay, I personally need to be reading this thing when my eyes are at their best focus and after I've had coffee and good eyeglasses. But it's just an excellent book written by somebody who truly takes the Bayesian approach. And it wasn't until I got into this that I realized, oh, I'm missing something. And I'll say also, much though I love this book, much though I think it's great, this is missing enough emphasis on the reverse KL divergence. It mentions KL divergence, doesn't say it's reverse. That's something to keep in mind. And it's really, really lightweight on the stat mech. But hey, this is the problem with developing sufficient pedagogy in this area. This book is good on the Bayesian. I was good in the stat mech. The two were not converging sufficiently, interwoven enough to make it useful for you. And that's what I realized was a big screw up. So that was point one. Here's point two, just as important. I was not emphasizing nearly enough one of the key things of generative AI, which is we're working in a latent variable space. The modeling is done in a latent variable space. And I knew that. I was reading the equations. It's like, oh, yeah, but I wasn't grasping it enough to put it smack in the center of what I was teaching. And so I wasn't communicating that effectively. That is a big thing. And that was a screw up on my part, which I've been rectifying. I've been going back to my basic top 10 terms in statistical mechanics short course and taking that week 3 material, which was all bonus material, but it was sort of like, a random hodgepodge of here's this, here's that, follow this. No. Pedagogy really needs to be much more refined, much more contiguous. We'll talk about pedagogy for that area in a different YouTube a different day. But that was something where I really screwed up. And now I'm inserting things and building the pedagogy very carefully because we need to hold these things in our heads quite meticulously as we move along. But here's the third big screw up on my part. And it's the one that I really wanted to talk about with you today because I've been inviting the people who've already signed up for top 10 terms. Some of them have been with me since the very beginning, since it was barely an alpha version. I mean, really an alpha version. I mean, very, very crude and limited. And they're typically people who studied with me in Northwestern, and they were kind enough to sign up. And then we've had some more recent people, and I invited all of them, everybody who'd signed up to be part of a study together cohort. And we had our first cohort meeting. This is about a month ago. And what they all said, every single one of them was saying, we need models. We need examples. We need code. We need to be able to walk through all these equations in terms of very specific examples, see the code, see how it works out. And I thought, oh my God. Oh, gee. Oh my God. I'm so completely missing that. And it hit me like a hammer blow because I grew up, as I said, I grew up being a chemist. And when I was a teenager, I worked for the chemistry department in their lab, stocking things, handing out supplies and such. And I knew about the importance of chem labs. As a chemistry major, we had tremendously demanding courses, but then in addition to the main course, we would always have an associated lab. And the labs were integral to the learning. And I was fluffing it. And that was the biggest screw up that I made. I was fluffing it on the laboratory component of learning active inference. And it's because code has not been my thing. I've been better with the equations than with the code. But my students said, we need the models. We need the code. And I thought, okay. So the next day I just had to regroup a little bit and contemplate the moment. The day after that, I sat down with Claude. And here's how that conversation went. Claude, I know that there is one major piece of code out there for active inference. It's called PyMDP. And it is research-oriented code. It's built in Python, Py part, and it is based on the MATLAB code that Friston and colleagues, Friston being Carl Friston, who invented active inference, have developed as a research tool for active inference. So it's basically the Python analog of the old MATLAB code. Very researchy, big, impressive code base. And I opened it up and I was just like, oh my God, this is a little intimidating. And there is documentation, but I'm still rough and rusty in my Python. And I looked at that and said, I just can't go in there. So I said to Claude, is there anything that you can do to help me here? And I really forget whether I showed Claude the PyMDP environment code or some other aspects, or I asked it to go find things, or if it knew already. I totally forget that part of the conversation. But what happened was Claude said, well, of course I can. I thought, what? Well, what can we do about this? Can we build like code that in a laboratory sequence that grows incrementally over time, that is pedagogic, that teaches people how to get into the active inference? And Claude said, of course we can. And moments later, Claude had laid out a full course plan. I thought, well, damn. It was truly like, I didn't believe we could do this thing. But then we started building it out. So week one was all getting the environment set up. That is not the variational inference part, but everything that leads us up to building variational inference. So it's installing all the right things that you need to install. That was day one. Then it's build a simple little graph world. That's day two. Then it's, well, we've got various matrices that we need. We need to be able to take an agent and have its belief about where it is, and, various steps. That was all days 3 through 5, and then do a complete walkthrough. That's day 6. And then for every single day, we built a PDF. So if you're interested in this kind of thing, hang with me. I'm going through this because this is the recovery action for that third major screw up, which was like, oh my God, we need code. There's no glossing around it. It's like trying to teach chemistry with no chem lab. People just don't learn it yet until you get hands-on. And so this has been the big breakthrough. Not just the code, but let me tell you, I've had so much fun. I'm giving you the punchline right away. I have had more fun doing this than I believed possible. It's been a blast, and I'm so encouraging you to join me on this because you will have an absolutely great time. Oh, you'll learn active inference. Okay, there's no question. But you're also going to have more fun than you believed you would have by going through these code elements that build one on the other, so you're not going to get lost. It never gets overwhelming or intimidating. And all of this is built so that you can ask Claude as you go along. But let me describe this to you. First of all, a Claude project, specific and dedicated to the lab. Actually, to the lab and to that concept-based course, the old top 10 terms in statistical mechanics, which is now expanded to include generative AI terms because we need all of that. And that's the intro course. It's designed as a 3-week course, but now we've got a 3-week plus lab course to go with it. Makes sense, doesn't it? This is so cool. Now, in the lab course, day by day, just like with the conceptual course, there's a day-by-day lab. So you access the labs. If you check out the description box here, you'll get a link to the blog post and you'll get a direct link to the GitHub, but the blog post also takes you over to the GitHub. Code is free. MIT license. By all means, use the code. Absolutely. You don't need the course to get the code. What the course gives you is 3 things. Okay, first of all, PDF tutorials. Every code comes with a tutorial that Claude and I have worked on extensively. And I mean like extensively. Like some of those PDFs that got published were like version 20 or 21. And some of that was just formatting and finessing. Oh, like Claude, there's a little orphan heading at the bottom of this page, or can you fix the fonts here, something like that. Some of it was really substantive. Claude, I think that on that code equation, can you explain it a little bit more? Can you give a little breakdown for people who are maybe a bit Python rusty? Because a lot of us coming in, we're going to be Python rusty. Or can you explain that concept a little bit more? So there's 3 things going on. There's the actual explanation of the code. There's a little bit of Python tutorial where we might need it. And then there's the conceptual stuff that actually links over to that whole conceptual course and to terms that we can't even put into that course because they only come up as we actually build code and build capabilities for the agent moving in its environment. That opens up so much. Not even going to that here. That would be totally separate YouTubes and videos specific for that course. But here you go. You've got the PDFs. That's the first contribution. Secondly is the Claude integration, just actually working with Claude as you go along, which is like having a study partner. It's fabulously helpful. And if you have a snag as you're working with the code or reading the PDF, you just say, Claude, can you explain? And it will be so fast and so easy and just, it takes stumbling blocks and reduces them to dust. And then here's the third thing. We're going to be building a cohort and successive cohorts for the lab course because what I realized, and this is another screw up on my part, is we need to go through this not individually and alone. It's like trying to cross over the mountains alone. Doable, survivable sometimes, not everybody, but it works so much better if we go as a group. Group cohesion, it's a real thing. Having study partners, having people that you can check in with, having people that you get to know. That's what we need these days because this is not trivial material. This is actually the most arcane, advanced, esoteric, like way up there conceptual stuff that exists in the realm of AI. And to be able to share that journey with people is so important. So here's what I'm asking you to do. This is our call to action sequence. And it's not even the like, subscribe business. Of course, that's important. But here, go over to the Themesis website, showing you a link. Go to the About page, which is also themesis.com/Themesis. You can scroll down, find an opt-in box, do the opt-in. The reason to opt in is this. We're lucky that we can connect here in this moment via YouTube. The probabilities of you're always catching the YouTubes are not always in your favor or mine. But if you're part of the Themesis community, then you get emails letting you know when there's a new YouTube, when there's new blog posts. They're not always coming out at the same time. And sometimes just an email that is an informational or tutorial email that you really want to know. And that could be things like, there's a new lab up, there's a new tutorial up, and I'm giving 24-hour free access, which you really, really want to know within that 24-hour period and not catching YouTube after that open access period has disappeared. So by all means, opt in. Now, I do recommend consider enrolling. In fact, what I really recommend is assessing. This is the real call to action. It's not enroll. It's not giving up email addresses. I mean, that's the mechanics. It's like step back, assess. Take a look from the blog post that I'm going to link to here, description post to blog post to other blog posts and other YouTubes that capture the recent history and assess, are we really on the cusp of something that's emerging and that's sufficiently different to warrant your attention? And if it's sufficiently different to warrant your attention, then do you need to act? And if you need to act, Well, then the first thing is not to like immersively enroll in a course. The first thing is to survey what are your options? How challenging is this material? How close is it to being useful for something practical? You need to survey the land first. And for that, I absolutely suggest, as a member of the Themesis community, you're going to have the greatest access available because we're going to be talking about this consistently over the weeks to come and the months and even the years ahead. So thank you. Lovely having a moment with you. Once again, Dr. Aliana Moren from Themesis. Have a lovely day. Till soon.